So hi, everyone who will join us, and hi, everyone who's watching this recording right now. Today, we have Danیela the Paulis in our Kуншткамера. And today, we have a super special guest here. It's, as already said, Danیela the Paulis. She's a media artist and a licensed radio operator. And since 2009, Danیela has been implementing radio technologies and philosophies in her art projects. This is super interesting, and we're going to talk about some of these projects today. Danیela is also collaborating with some prominent research institutes, and for her projects, she's using state-of-the-art, which means, up-to-date, super powerful radio telescopes. Maybe if there's something that I'm not saying correct, Danیela will fix me later. Also, Danیela has been working for the past 14 years, I guess. Danیela has been working on a series of innovative projects combining radio technologies with live performance art and neuroscience. She's a member of the IAA SETI. SETI is the abbreviation of Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence Permanent Committee, and a member of the UK SETI Hub. And in addition to her artistic practice, Danیela publishes academic papers as well. So Danیela, hi, it's very, very nice to see you here. We are very happy that you are ready to spend some time with us. Thank you very much for coming.
Hi, Oksana, and hi to everyone watching. It's really an honor to be part of this platform. So thank you for the invitation, and I'll be happy to talk to you about my work and assigning space, if you like.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I prepared a couple of questions to you based on what I've seen, probably not everything. And I would like to start with your most recent project, if I'm not mistaken. It's Assigned in Space. Probably you have something in process right now, but I know that Assigned in Space is something that is already ongoing, and it's a very large scale, very ambitious, and very fascinating project. And I hope I understood the point of it correctly. It's, as far as I can remember, it's during this project, a spacecraft from Mars orbit sent a coded signal to Earth, simulating a message from potential extraterrestrials, like simulating the message that we might probably get somewhere in future. And now anyone can join in decoding the signal. And my first question is, how did you manage to implement such a large-scale project?
I think this is not actually, this is not my most difficult project, I have to say. It grew up in a very organic way. I've been part of the SETI committee since 2015. So I already knew many of the scientists I'm working with now, and we know each other's research. We often meet at conferences. So the start of the project was relatively easy because I simply had this idea of transmitting a simulated extraterrestrial message towards Earth, and having people trying to decode it, try to give sense and meaning to this extreme form of communication. So the idea was very simple initially, very strong as well, and the first scientists in the SETI committee that I contacted were really enthusiastic. And from there, we really worked together to make it grow. And we contacted the European Space Agency as a team. And the European Space Agency was also very positive and supportive of the idea since the very start. And from there, it really grew very organically by having people joining, bringing some of their expertise and ideas into it. It's very much how I work in general with people, regardless of their disciplines. I have this very open approach to performance, which somehow I borrowed from my former work with dance, contemporary dance, especially. For example, in contemporary dance improvisation sets, you have people joining in and out at any given time, and everyone becomes part of the performance, bringing something into it, into that structure. So this kind of way of working is very much very natural to me. I have this very open framework where people can join, and usually it's really the dynamic grows organically together with the project. So at the end, my management of the project also is not particularly difficult, because everyone finds their own place within the project, within the work. So it's, for me, a really wonderful way to work with people and to make this very large project happen almost effortlessly. But of course, that's not completely true, because it requires also a lot of background work as well.
This is very interesting. For me, it's like far more intriguing now when you said that it's not even the most difficult, your project, but it still seems very hard to organize, and it also seems maybe expensive, and really there are probably lots of people, lots of equipment that is used, and I'm delighted that we live in a world where such projects can be implemented. But at the same time, I'm very curious how it works in general. Why does the scientific community cooperate with artists? Can it, I don't know, somehow be converted into like maybe money or public interest or public understanding of something important that scientists want us to know? Or is there some higher, maybe less obvious mission in all of this? I mean, how does it work that artists are given access to spacecrafts on other planets, or like, let alone radio telescopes and all sorts of other cool equipment here on Earth?
Thanks, Oksana. This is such a crucial question. When I said it wasn't the most difficult project, probably what I meant is that most people think that it was extremely difficult to bring this team together. And actually it wasn't. So bringing people together was probably the easiest part of the project. But indeed, there were a lot of challenges, most of all technical challenges. So the scientists at the European Space Agency and the scientists at the various radio observatories, and myself, of course, we had to meet regularly for about 2 years in order to make sure that the connection between the spacecraft orbiting Mars and the 3 radio antennas could successfully receive the signal. So it wasn't trivial at all. And in addition to that, there were all other technical challenges. Every radio telescope has a different receiver, so we have to make sure that we could find a band that would suit everybody. It was really complicated, actually, technically speaking. And in addition to that, we had Mars that was getting further and further away from Earth. So we had also some limitations in terms of time. So May 2023, which is when we performed the live event eventually, was one of the very last moment when we could present this project, because Mars was getting too far from Earth and some radio antennas might not have been able to participate. So there were these, but also a lot of other challenges and most of all, creating the message was probably the most difficult thing I've ever done in my life. And I'm not, I think, underestimating this. I'm not overestimating this. It was so complex. because initially when we started looking at some of the questions addressed by the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence researchers. And eventually we kept hitting a wall for which every idea we presented was deemed to be too anthropocentric. So it was really difficult to reach to a conclusion where we were all relatively pleased with the outcome. And we felt pleased with the fact that we really put anthropocentrism to the most scrutiny. And this really allowed us to say, okay, well, at this point, we can present this message to the public because we think we really at least address these questions very thoroughly. So it was very challenging, but not in a way that most people think, to bring these scientists from different fields together. That wasn't. I think to answer your question about why, for example, an artist has access to a spacecraft orbiting Mars, which I think is quite exceptional, even in the field of art science. I think this was really the fact that everyone really loved the idea from the very beginning. And I think it was also very timely. We hear so much about exoplanets now, about extraterrestrial intelligence. I think this project was, by chance, very timely. And for this reason, I think scientists just felt that it was something that everyone wanted to really make it happen. So I don't think there was any particular agenda behind it. Of course, the European Space Agency and the various observatories dedicated time and expertise, personnel to this project. So of course, this is also financial commitment. But in general, I think the main reason for them was to really make such an extraordinary event happen. And of course, there is also some return in terms of image. So of course, everyone was very pleased with the outcome. We had an incredible media coverage that we probably didn't expect completely. So that was also very, very positive for everybody, of course.
Thank you for your answer. Actually, you explained how things work from the point of view of science part of it. And now I'm curious to know how it works from the artist part of it. Actually, here you mentioned that the public is now actually feel lots of interest in extraterrestrial life and these kind of topics. Our previous Kуншткамера was with David Spergel. I don't know if you know him. He's the chair of NASA's UAP, a team that is now, the UAP team, probably. Yeah. Okay. So we were also discussing things about like what they discover, especially after those Congress situation that recently happened. And now indeed people really want to know, is there something out there? But also, as I've already said, my following question will be about how things work from the point of view of this art part, because, and I have many questions if we have time for them about your other project among the Science and Space. But first, I would really love to have a better understanding on how everything works in general. I mean, the process of being an artist and displaying your works. Let's say in the world of something analog, say paintings on canvas, the display of art is by, like the simplest way is exhibiting those canvases somewhere in the galleries, etc. And for me, it's very interesting to understand how does everything work with the media art and other some live meetings with the artist for everyone who wants just watch, like during maybe opening. Can works then be displayed later in some places so that everyone can just come and see? Or should a person be there and take part in it, whether it's online or offline, how it works, like the cooperation of the audience and artists?
There is so much to this question that I could answer. First of all, maybe I can say that I find my role as an artist quite hybrid. So for me, art is one layer of my project. So when I make a project, I don't think of an artwork only. I think art is part of culture and society. So for me, there has to be more layers to it than art only. So I always think of the project as something really encompassing much more than art. So sometimes I consider myself also a theater director or a film director. So I happen to direct this very large project where I give an artistic direction, also logistic direction. But overall, every person participating is very much of an actor. So every scientist who is part of it is a very important person. So for me, it's really important that the project really shows as an almost a theatrical event, and in this case, a signing space is very much a theatrical event. So it was performed as a cosmic event, including even another celestial body, and so for during the first week we had an incredible media coverage. We reached more than 145 million people with online articles, and for me this is equal to having many people sitting in a theater room in a building watching the same theatrical performance. It is a very similar event. So during that week especially, we had people from around the world, from all different cultures, thinking about SETI, talking about SETI, reading about SETI, imagining this event, this scenario, first contact. And for me, this is the most powerful way to create an artistic event, to really make people experience what's happening. So make it really part of daily life, and really merging reality and fiction in a way that it is educational as well. We don't give the impression that this was a real event. We didn't want to go in the direction of fake media, but still it was highly imaginative. So it has that kind of really creative power that art can convey. So this is really the way I work in general. And I think that nowadays with internet technologies and that allow society, scientists, artists to expand their creation also at cosmic scales. If we think about scientists, they can operate this spacecraft at the edge of the solar system and beyond through the internet, and so we have such an incredible extension of our mind and our creativity that I think as artists we shouldn't limit ourselves to the art gallery. I have full respect of people who create painting and sculptures and like to show their work there. It's great meaning even in 2023. But for me, as an artist who is used to also work with the space on stage and really thinking of space as something which goes way beyond myself and my immediate surrounding, for me, this extension of the idea of space has always been very natural, very organic.
Thank you very much. It has actually explained lots of things. I hope not only to me, but for our potential readers as well. And actually why I asked this, because it seemed to me when I was diving in your ideas, I felt like your projects make the audience, they make them feel like full participants in the action, like they are artists as well, with their own interpretations, with their own even contribution. And when I say this, one of the, in my personal opinion, one of the most interesting project of yours is Cogito project, which allowed participants to send their brain activity into space. On your website, it says that this project started in 2013 and is still going on. So if I understand correctly, there is still a brain laboratory inside a cabin of a radio telescope in Netherlands, through which people can participate in the project, or I misunderstand something. So
no, you understood fully correctly. It's just that the website is not updated, I'm afraid. So the event was envisioned as something that would be ongoing, but eventually, between conception and creation of the project, a lot of things happened. So I, as an artist, I really value the scientific accuracy of what I do, because the technological instruments for me are the material through which I create my work. So I didn't want to have, for example, an electroencephalogram device which records the brain activity of participants. That was not really accurate. I wanted to do this in a very thorough, very scientifically accurate way. And that made everything more interesting, but also more complex. So the plan to host these events on a regular basis at the telescope eventually was not deemed feasible. First of all, because I work with 3 neuroscientists who are living in different continents. So it would be extremely hard every time to bring them back to a telescope to do this event. And also because the technology, everything was quite complex. So it would have been really also financially not sustainable to host. So we had a few events, but unfortunately, at the moment, there is no really ongoing performances of this particular project. There is, of course, the hope that in the near future, technology will become cheaper this kind of technology will become more advanced and cheaper at the same time. So we will be able to host these with in a much more sustainable way. And that will probably bring this project back also internationally. So once the technology is fully established, we can also take it all around the world. Wherever people have an antenna, there can be people participating.
Wow, this is super interesting. Also, while diving in your ideas, I was interested in one technology that you developed, and I would like to ask you about the visual moon bounce technology, and specifically how it was used in the family portrait project.
That is one of my favorite work. So the family portrait is a photo that was left on the moon by Charles Duke, who was part of the last manned lunar mission in 1972. And in 2015, through a network called Astronomers Without Borders, I was able to contact Charles Duke and ask for the photocopy of this original photo. So he sent me the scanned copy, and we reflected to the moon and back. So basically this technology called visual moon bounce is something which I developed in 2009, 2010. This was the first project I've done with radio and space technologies. So I was working with some radio operators in the Netherlands, in Italy, in Brazil. Radio operators usually are connected throughout the world. It's a large network. So I proposed the idea of using the moon bounce technology for visual data. This was something that in amateur radio has never been done, really. And probably there has been some attempt, but no one really pursued it really successfully. Or in general, there is no great interest in amateur radio for, in moon bounce, at least for this kind of visual exchange. It is mostly based on Morse code or audio exchange. So this was quite a refreshing idea for the amateur radio community. So together we developed the technology, but also the aesthetic quality of the technology. So again, I was very much of an artistic director where I was directing their technical work towards having an outcome that was also very engaging for the audience. So if you see a typical amateur radio signal, maybe it's not so interesting for the public, but when you have an artist really shaping the technology, it becomes much more communicative. And this is exactly what we achieved with these live events between the Earth and the Moon. We had people participating, sending their images from all over the world, watching in real time their images returning from the Moon. And that is really how you involve the public, whether it's specialists or non-specialists, in a way that the technology becomes meaningful to them, has an evocative power. Otherwise, the technology per se is exceptional, is really interesting, but how do you make it experiential? And for me, this has always been a leading question of my practice, and very much I carry this question also in assigning space where the audience is very much involved. They are, as you said, co-creators. They are very much now actors themselves, performers. They bring so much of their ideas, of their creativity into the work. So at this point, I feel that this project, Assigning Space, but also my former projects, they really become part of the public domain. I don't have control over them anymore. Assigning Space, for example, now has been completely taken over by the international community. So they are using this image that they call the SAR map for on ongoing creation of ideas. So I have no control over that. It's just really wonderful to see how many ideas are unfolding and how the public appropriates this message in a way that becomes meaningful for them, meaningful for, in general, humankind, everyone participating from different places around the world.
Thank you very much. There are also a couple of little bit speculative questions that I would like to ask you. Like scientists usually, like normally, they agree that within our universe, with its parameters, the universal language for all civilization will be the language of mathematics. And I'm curious to know your opinion. Can the language of art also be in some way universal? As the researchers of both art and space, do you consider that there's such an option? Do you consider such an option according to which this potential contact might take place precisely with the help of some artistic practices?
I like to think so, of course. So it's really difficult to imagine what another civilization might be like. It's extremely, extremely difficult. I think this is why, for us, creating this simulated extraterrestrial message was extremely challenging. I think if we ever found another civilization, would be similar to us. So we might be finding a civilization that is using radio, is using mathematics, and maybe has creative abilities. In this case, they might have some form of art in a way or another. So I think that could be the civilization we might be able to intercept through these searches of radio signals and other ways of detection. So if there is a civilization that is extremely different from us, that uses technology, and maybe not even technology, maybe not even mathematics, they might have a completely different cognitive system, cognitive abilities and sensory abilities that we can't even imagine. They might have a completely different understanding of the universe, of science. So I think that is way beyond our headspace to really understand. There are so many science fiction works that speculate on potential extraterrestrial life, but ultimately all these works, all films we created so far, they are always within our human understanding. So there is really, it's extremely difficult, I think, practically impossible to really know how a civilization very different from us might be operating.
You mentioned science fiction right now, and yeah, I would also like to ask you about some art that inspired you. I think next time I'll be watching Contact, written on what Carl Sagan wrote. The series of association will lead me to you. But also I'm curious to know what works of art, what pieces of art, whether books, films, or whatever, have inspired you the most, both as a child and as an adult, and have been of what led you to your current artistic practices?
I think in terms of art, I've been really inspired by many performers I worked with over the years, especially people I've been studying with during my formative years as a dancer. I think the generosity I experienced from these teachers has been extremely inspiring. I don't know how to describe it, but really there was such a great sense of giving and sharing within the performance art that I experienced, that for me really this carries on throughout my work now as a media artist, where I feel like I really want to co-create with the public. I want to share with the public. So that for me is really, really important. And in terms of artists who inspire me over the years, I can think of so many. Robert Smithson, for example, is one who was a land artist, and his way of working, which in the 60s and 70s was very cutting edge. He was really combining different fields already, geology and art and philosophy. So he's really a broad mind of looking at art, for me, has been extremely inspiring. So when I learned about these pioneering artists in the conceptual art field, I realized that anything can be art if you create a work that makes art part of daily life discourse. So it's not about what is art and what is not. It's more how you create the work that can make even the most simple concept or object become really interesting and evocative. So for me, this was really, really a sort of turning point. And in terms of science fiction, I read a lot of science fiction, but I find that probably one of the authors that has been most influential for my projects with radio is Stanisław Lem. So his book, Solaris, for example, has been quite inspiring also for Cogito in Space, which is the project we mentioned earlier, and also Mare Incognito, which is the project before A Sign in Space. And I would say that when I was creating the message for A Sign in Space, also his work was quite in my mind. And also, of course, Italo Calvino is another science fiction author, very different from Stanisław Lem and Arthur C. Clarke, for example. He doesn't talk about space technology, but he speaks about the cosmos and space in a way that is extremely refreshing and humorous as well. And really everything becomes such an incredible thought experiment when, for example, he presents this character who is maybe the very first being populating the universe, or he talks, for example, about the very first cell in the entire universe. So it really forces the reader to imagine this extremely this surreal and completely impossible scenarios, which I think are really enjoyable to dive into this completely different imaginary. So for me, it's been a very, very influential throughout my work, I would say, since the very start of my artistic career.
Thank you very much. When you mentioned Stanisław, I had goosebumps all over everywhere. I'm from, he's from my city, and I'm not far away from his house right now. Also, I wanted to ask you another thing. In your interview during the SETI live stream, you said that if I understood it correctly, you said that you are communicating with space, not aliens, not potential extraterrestrials, and that you are not even pointing an antenna at some direct celestial body. And my last question for you is going to be a little bit weird. I guess it's going to be really, really weird. Have you ever had probably a sparkle of a thought that the universe itself could be a big thinking machine, so that everything around could have some form of consciousness that we simply cannot yet comprehend?
Yeah, this was very much part of my research when I was working on Cogito in Space, was researching about different types of consciousness and the theories of mind. And one of the theories that caught my attention was by physicists who think that the entire universe might be conscious, and that consciousness might be also matter, so very much part of the fabric of the cosmos. Of course, this is really interesting, and then we go into panpsychism and a lot of other philosophical ideas. For me, I think I often thought about the Earth being a little bit like the planet Solaris. So from another civilization, we might look like Solaris ourselves. So I think, I don't know, I sometimes I really compare the question of consciousness to the questions that astronomers are asking about, for example, dark matter, or a lot of big questions about physics. So I find that these are really complementary and huge questions that I like to discuss usually in a common playground. So I often invite neuroscientists and astronomers to come together and discuss exactly this kind of questions. What is dark matter? What is consciousness? And see how we can combine methodologies, philosophies. And usually when you create this common ground, you realize it's really interesting to see all scientists becoming very humble and realizing how even their methodology that they find very comfortable within their work suddenly becomes extremely blurry, and they have to start reframing the questions from scratch. So it is a really, really interesting philosophical exercise.
So Daniela, thank you very much for your time, and thank you very much for your works, for your inspiring ideas, for your inspiring thoughts and everything that you do. And of course, thank you very much for this conversation, and for our readers, for our community to read then or watch then what we now just discussed. So thank you very much for this.
Thank you, Oksana, and all the team at Kunst for having me. And really, thanks for the very interesting questions. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye, thanks.
Thanks, bye.
Bye.